There's a sonnet by the Italian Renaissance poet Petraca, and it describes the heat of love as a passionate warrior inside his heart. But when he expresses his love, she gets annoyed by his lack of decorum. And so he sets this distance between them, this lontananza, the separation between these two. And although it's so emotionally painful, the speaker decides he will embrace his emotions and not try to escape. So let me read you the poem first. Love that lives and reigns in my thought and holds the central place in my heart sometimes comes to my brow, fully armed, takes a stand there and sets up his banner. She who teaches love and suffering wishes great desire and burning hope to be restrained by reason, reverence, shame, is angered in herself by her ardor. Then love retreats in fear to the heart, relinquishing its aim, both trembles and weeps, hides himself there and doesn't appear anymore. What can I do now that my Lord's afraid, but stay with him until the final hour? For he ends well, who dies loving well. So now I'm going to pair some moments to the main themes that you know already. Here is love that lives. And here, love sets up his banner. She wishes to be restrained. And she gets angered. Then love trembles and weeps. And I stay with him until the final hour. Okay, so with those themes in mind, let's see how you hear it differently this time.
ambiguous grief. I didn't learn that term until after his accident, but it very much applied to caring for our brother as well, because the person you knew and loved and the life you had mapped out for yourself and that person is no longer the same. And that is grief and loss, even though we had not yet lost them. We often leave grief and loss to the loss of a life. But ambiguous grief, as I've come to learn and embrace and understand that and continue to heal through that, is recognizing that the person who was once there is no longer there. And so meeting them where they are in that present moment and embracing that, and really seeing a lot of the conscious listening tools too, of just being really present with that person in new ways and being open to who they still are and can be. And I've done a lot of reframing and a lot of work since launching Courage to Caregivers around my own care in that way, because we can internalize it so much as our own. And so learning all the tools and working to practice them and holding myself accountable, which is what the beauty of peer support is too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Now I just want to translate that into my physical brain, because as you're talking about speaking truth, but in a way that you're also accepting that the reality may not change, but you're able to still say it. And I was thinking, as a performer, we may have some really difficult passages, and the first tendency is to play it loud and forcefully. And then as we grow in terms of the language that's available, the color palette, we learn to have so many different ways of speaking reality. And so I'm just thinking in my own learning of how to bring up something from reality in a variety of ways, and not necessarily always forte and forceful, but it could be just very distinct and pianissimo. And I've been learning to do that in life, what I do on the piano. The other thing that came up was it's the grief and the loss and the pain of that. And as we heard in the poetry that I was pairing with Chopin, the idea of sitting with something that is really painful, but you own it, and you accept that as part of what's happening with your identity, and how, in music, when we embrace dissonance and embrace like a longer period of dissonance or a bigger amount of dissonance, the resolution at the end of it seems so much more meaningful for having traveled through that. And the piece and the moment just carries more gravitas because we were sitting in that dissonance.
Well, the poem you chose to match that piece, I don't know about all of you who are carers here, but that was a caregiving poem. I mean, that was literally a caregiving poem. And the connection for me also is that, from that poem, is that, grief is the immense grief, traumatic grief, ambiguous loss, all of the different kinds of grief, is the price we pay for love. Because without love, we would have no grief. Mm-hmm. And so it's really painful. And so I do feel like, I'm sure you think in your work, it makes meaning out of pain, and then it also offers hope. And I saw that as you were playing, so much hope in both of those things.
Mm-hmm. So our big ask for you is to please support this important work, however you're able. Please help us spread the word and help us to celebrate the caregivers that you know. They need to know that their work is appreciated and that it's so important for our society. And so I'm